Yeah.
4 completely different decks.
You have 3 players here playing the decks they've been known to be playing over the last 6 or 9 months, and then the metagame master playing something a little off the wall, a deck you haven't seen very much of in recent months, Bam Megamorph.
Yeah, if you don't like the standard format, that's on you.
Yep.
Sylvan carry out it here for Andersen. Nelson will draw a card. Looks like he picked up a copy of Disdainful Stroke.
One of his most valuable cards in the matchup, assuming he's backing it up with pressure. If he gives Chris an indefinite amount of time, Chris can do other stuff. He does not necessarily have to play into that card. Keep himself busy with Death Mist Raptor. Keep himself busy with Genesis Hydra. Other 3 drops. Yeah, he's got plenty of other things to be doing. But if Brad's able to put under some pressure, Chris won't have a choice but to tap out for some of his big threats, and that's when the Disdainful Stroke can be very powerful.
Brad down to 19 from a windswept Heath.
Thank you.
He's going to search up a Plains. We might have a Fleece main lion here. We do. That's the pressure he's looking for.
Yeah, that's part of it. Now, this can get outclassed pretty easily. Worth keeping that in mind.
Forest off the top there for Andersen. We'll see how important that was. There is a Forest. It's time for maybe a Blue Chronos. Looks like it's just going to be a Morph there in Rattleclaw Mystic. Chris looking to go big.
Yeah.
Dragonlord Ojutide the draw there for Nelson.
Basically daring Brad to have a blue source of mana and be willing to leave it up, or else Chris is going to do something big next turn.
Well, there's your blue source of mana. That's leaving it up. Andersen will draw a card. It's a copy of Xenagos.
And Xenagos is such a solid test spell here because it's probably good enough to counter. But if it gets countered, who cares?
Chris might start with a Courser here, perhaps. Maybe not. He'll think some things through here. Keep in mind, Rattleclaw Mystic is the morph. He'll unmorph that. Little surge in mana. Another morph. Maybe. Yep. Now here's Courser. Take a look at that top card. It's a basic Forest.
I don't think the ideal sequencing there from Chris, but it's all the same.
It's kind of a freebie, kind of not. It's a little unclear if that nets him mana and how much that accomplishes.
Well, you typically want to just Courser first in most circumstances. Doesn't matter all that much, but there might have been a mid-sequence move to a different play that Chris identified.
See if Brad has a card like Dromoka's Command here. It would be a big deal if he did. He's reaching for mana already. It looks like it's just another copy of Fleece main line. He'll pass the turn back over to Andersen.
Yeah, that Dromoka's Command there would be a huge deal. Fight the Morph, sacrifice an enchantment.
Top card of the deck now is a copy of Wooded Foothills. And what Chris can actually do now because of the mana advantage, he can overpower him.
Well, he can also, he can resolve 2 4-mana spells in the same turn.
Yep. Here's a land from Andersen. Blue Chronos got countered by Disdainful Stroke. Take a look at the top card. It's another Forest. Chris will sacrifice that, take that Forest, put it on the battlefield. He'll shuffle his deck here in just a moment. But as you mentioned, he can actually resolve 2 4-mana spells.
Yep. It's one way to beat the Disdainful Stroke.
Blue Chronos got countered. That's all right. I got a Xenagos now. Xenagos can provide me even more mana to let me go completely nuts.
You get to go under, or you get to go way over the top.
Yep.
And now Chris is in a position to do the second thing.
Here is Xenagos. And with Xenagos now comes Whisper Elemental too. You want to talk about a turn. There's the top card of Temple Abandon. That's a turn right there. That's going to bring a Manifest along with it.
And this is the problem, you know, from Brad's side of the table here. Is the first time he fails a check, it's hard for him to catch up.
Top card there, Sylvan Carry added.
Dragonlord Ojutide is the only card in his deck that even resembles the power level of the things that Chris is doing.
And he probably has to cast it now, which he will. But if you caught a glimpse of Chris's hand, he has something to do with all of this mana. Carry added may be the draw, and that's not all that exciting, but Hornet Queen is in hand right now. Forest on top of the deck. He'll take that, gain a life, go up to 20. Next card, Courser, will be Courser of Crucifix. That's his draw. Next turn, potentially, if he does miss the Whisper Elemental trigger. Xenagos looks like it's ticking up. 6 mana. There's Hornet Queen. 4 insects joining it.
And this is a card that Brad almost can't beat game one.
The Manifest will be Courser of Crucifix. There's a card on top is Forest. That'll be Chris's draw for the turn. And as you said, this is basically a card Brad can't beat. That's why he's conceding right now. He can't get through this.
No.
Just too much.
But I feel like the game almost got away from him on the previous turn. And not to say that there was anything he did wrong, just once he fails a check, it's over.
Yeah.
There's no catching up in that spot.
Chris Andersen going to win game number 1 here over Brad Nelson. Greener at Devotion up a game over Matt Megamorph. We'll take a look at the sideboards here for both players. And we will start with Nelson and his 3 Hornet Nest, 3 Master of the Unseen, another copy of Disdainful Stroke and Dromoka's Command, 2 Plummet, a Valorous Dance, 2 Elspeth, and 2 Glare of Heresy. Good options.
Yeah, the 2 copies of Elspeth, the Valorous Dance, the Dromoka's Command, and the additional copy of Disdainful Stroke, those are all things Brad's in the market for. The question to me is Hornet Nest. Now, Chris is ultimately attacking on the ground and with some big creatures, so Hornet Nest on the surface seems like it could be reasonable. The problem is that I don't think Brad has the luxury of positioning himself as a control deck in the matchup.
I don't think so either.
Even if there's spots where Hornet Nest will be good, on the balance, I think Brad needs to be aggressive and trying to keep Chris off balance, not trying to lock up the game on the ground and go haymaker for haymaker. So even though Hornet Nest looks like it could be productive, I think Brad is probably best served leaving it on the bench.
For Andersen, he's got 3 Den Protector, 2 Hornet Nest, 4 copies of Plummet, 2 Nissa World Waker, an Ugin, a Barrage of Boulders, and 2 copies of Roast.
I think we're going to see the Ugin come in. I think we're going to see some number of Plummets, probably not the full 4, but I would guess 2 come in. And I think the 3 copies of Den Protector will come in as well. I don't mind bringing in Roast as Brad's got some ground pounders. Not that that really matters, but if Brad's cards are only good when he's ahead, if Chris can at least keep the tempo even, it's hard for him to leverage things like Valorous Dance and Disdainful Stroke.
These players will shuffle up for game number 2. This could be one of the match of the weeks in the Star City Games newsletter. As we have revamped that, we've brought some exclusive content along with it. And it's pretty cool stuff, actually, you'll find now. It's definitely your source of Magic the Gathering news.
Yeah, this is a great summary of everything that's going on, both on the website and on the Open Series, with recommended articles from content coordinator Cedric Phillips, a match of the week selected from the Open Series, exclusive deck lists and advice from some of your favorite premium columnists, and an exclusive cardboard crack comic. Best of all, you can sign up for free right now at starcitygames.com/newsletter.
Quick update for you guys on our other match. Mr. Jones, Kevin Jones, has won game number 1 here against the Boz, Andrew Boswell. So Jeskai up a game over Abzan Aggro. That matchup can really go both ways. Kevin was on the play there. He was number 4 overall seed, and Andrew was the 8, so that might be the reason for that result.
Yeah, there are some draws that Abzan Aggro can get where if you go Lightning Strike into Mana Strider, they're done.
Yep.
You know, they're too far behind, they're taking too much damage off their lands, and there aren't enough clean ways to answer it. I mean, if you look at Boswell's deck, it is a vulnerability of his. 3 copies of Ultimate Price, doesn't kill Mana Strider. 3 copies of Valorous Dance, doesn't kill Mana Strider. 4 copies of Dromoka's Command, predicated on having a creature in play, and Kevin has a fair amount of removal. So he is vulnerable to those starts on the play from Kevin. At least game 1. Post-board, he can answer Mana Strider a little bit more easily.
For the players that are in our top 4, for those of you wondering at home, Kevin Jones, this is his 7th Open Series top 8. For Brad Nelson, his 10th. For the Boz, his 8th. And for Chris Andersen, be a little surprised to see that he's leading the pack, his 15th.
Yeah, I mean, by a lot.
Yeah.
My guess would have been Brad, and then my second guess would have been Kevin.
Yep. But for Chris, this is Open Series top 8 number 15. Very impressive stuff for him.
Same as Kevin Jones and Andrew Boswell combined.
Yeah.
Would not have necessarily guessed that, but he has had a lot of top 8s in the Midwest. A lot of them were a couple of years ago. A lot of them were in Legacy, which got a little bit less attention than Standard did back when we had the 2-day open splits. But Chris, 15 top 8s is a lot.
Chris is back in a pretty big way, truth be told. You know, he started playing again a lot at the beginning of the year, really wanted to get focused in. I know he took some time off for school and other things with life, but he has really focused in. His game might be as sharp as it's ever been right now.
I mean, his energy, his enthusiasm, his commitment has come and gone over the last couple of years, but he is definitely sharp when he's locked in. No question about it.
Nelson will be on the play here for game number 2. I know it is a goal of Andersen's to qualify for the Players' Championship this year. He's got a lot of work to do, but with more finishes like this, we could see him there at the end of the year. We already know Brad's going to be there.
And what we saw from Chris in the top 8 was a really good sign. When Al tripped up there and gave an opening for Chris to win the game, not only did Chris see it, he saw it immediately.
Yep.
No hesitation.
Nelson going to start things off with a Temple of Plenty. Top card going to go to the bottom. Game number 2 underway here in our semifinals. 4 is the draw here for Andersen. Elvish Mystic looks like it's coming as well. Good start there for Andersen. Nelson will take a draw step. He'll sacrifice his Flooded Strand. We got Plains on the way. And now Fleece Main Lion. So you mentioned that he's got to get aggressive to start. This is about the best way for him to do so.
He needs to get out in front and then needs to leave up his wall of cards like Valorous Dance and Disdainful Stroke.
A Forest and a Morph here for Andersen. We head back Nelson's way. Nelson will take a draw step. Yavimaios is what he's found. Keep in mind, he does have a copy of Valorous Stance in hand. Also has a copy of Dromoka's Command. So pretty good hand here for Brad.
Yep, this is about the mix of cards that Brad wants. Probably one more threat card would be nice, but this is a solid opening hand. The problem if you're Brad is, are you already in a position where you have to start leaving up your reactive cards? Chris is threatening to generate a lot of mana next turn.
Here's Dromoka's Command. I'm going to take care of the Morph. The Morph was a copy of Radical Mystic. We saw Chris use that last game to be able to go pretty big, pretty quickly. Fleece Main Line going to get a counter. It's an attack for 4. Andersen down to 16. 4 is the draw here for Andersen. Looks like his hand is a little land heavy at this point.
Yeah, and that Dromoka's Command there for Brad, very well timed. Because now Chris's hand, I think he's essentially taking this turn off. And then it becomes very feasible for Brad to just leave up the Valorous Dance, Disdainful Stroke element of his deck. To say nothing if Brad has another copy of Dromoka's Command in hand, because then he's fighting the Elf, and Chris is back another turn.
Here's 4 mana. Genesis Hydra for 2. Take a look at the 2 cards. Nykthos is 1, Corsair is 2. Not going to hit there.
And that play looks weird, but I think the problem is, you know, if Chris says go with the intent of playing Whisperwood Elemental the next turn, he is dead to Valorous Stance, he is dead to Disdainful Stroke, he is dead to a Dromoka's Command this turn. So he's trying to build up a base of mana. If Genesis Hydra hits Rattle Claw Mystic, Sylvan Caryatid, or Elvish Mystic, then he might be able to put together 2 spells in one turn or draw and play one of his big plays. It's risky, but I think it's even riskier for him to just say go and hope to get the next turn and resolve Whisperwood Elemental.
It looks weird, and in that situation when it doesn't hit, it looks bad. But I think I understand what he's trying to do. I mean, you mentioned all the mana accelerants that he can hit. I mean, just passing the turn back, and if Brad does just Dromoka's Command, the Elvish Mystic, it's like he's gotten time walked.
Yep. And this clock is not, you know, that short from Brad. I mean, it's 4 damage a turn. I don't think Chris can afford to take a full turn off there and lose to a lot of Brad's deck.
Yeah, I feel the same way. See what's next here for Nelson. He's already gotten his 4 damage across. Andersen at 12, Nelson at 19. A lot to think about right now if you're Brad.
What he's trying to think about right now is, what does Genesis Hydra for 2 mean? I mean, that's a bizarre play.
Yep. And we're never going to get a look at Chris's hand if you're Brad. You don't have Thoughtseize or anything like that. So you're really just kind of guessing.
Yeah. What are the implications of that play?
Is your hand that good that you need to empty that card out right now? Nelson just going to play a Morph. No land to play past the turn back. Here comes Genesis Hydra. Maybe. Yes.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Brad's not blocking. Here comes Whisper Elemental. That'll bring a Manifest along with it. Pass the turn back. Will Nelson over to Andersen. Death Mist Raptor the draw.
And Brad right now just so desperate for lands.
Well, I think that's a Den Protector that's going to get back a Flooded Strand, honestly. Yep. Brad will sacrifice that.
And this may yield Dromoka's Command.
Or Valor Stance.
Pretty good turn.
Yep. There's Valor Stance to take care of the Whisperwood Elemental. And here come the beatdowns. No good blocks available here for Andersen. You might want a chump block, depending on what the manifest is.
feels a little early to be chump blocking when Chris might have an opportunity to double block to good effect next turn.
Andersen already down to 5. There's a forest. Looks like a den protector for Chris. He doesn't have a ton of morphs in his deck, so Brad can probably suss this out.
Yeah.
Looks like Andersen may just be passing the turn back. Has to take a little bit more of a defensive approach. Back Nelson's way now. If you remember during round 10, we saw the games really go like this for Brad. He was ahead. He was getting aggressive. Chris was able to play enough defense, draw one of his big spells, slide it through, and then he was able to take the initiative back.
Yeah.
This feels very familiar from what we watched a little bit earlier in the day. Brad just couldn't get across the finish line.
And even at Chris's big draws right now, you know, Dragon Lord Dromoka, for instance, that catches him back up.
Yeah.
For as bad as this game has gone.
Dragon Lord Tarka.
Excuse me. If Brad is without Disdainful Stroke, he is not out of the woods yet.
Nelson with a lot to think about here. Healthy amount of cards in hand. He'll start by playing a forest. In he comes, threatening monstrosity on the Fleece main line. Andersen gonna unmorph his Den Protector. See what he wants to return. Looks like it's gonna be Whisperwood Elemental. So Den Protectors can run into each other right now.
Well, this is an opportunity here for Brad to use Dromoka's command in hand and put a counter on the Den Protector, and that means it can't be blocked.
I think that might be what he's thinking about
The
right now.
problem is, if you're using Dromoka's command that way, then Fleeceman Lion can get blocked. And if something happens to your Den Protector next turn, you got nothing going on.
Yep. It's interesting because there isn't a ton that can happen, I suppose, to the Den Protector as far as, you know, killing it. You know, a Crater's Claws-esque effect. You're not going to find that, but it'll become a 4-power creature, and where's Whisperwood Elemental in Chris's hand?
Exactly. And Chris does have 2 copies of Roast in his sideboard, which may have come in.
Sure. Those almost certainly have come in.
I believe they have.
The only way Chris can really lose is by the game going short.
Yep.
We'll see a +1/+1 counter on the Den Protector, and Brad going to use Fleece Mainline to fight the Elvish Mystic. A good fight there.
Just trying to choke Chris on mana as much as he possibly can.
And whatever blocks the Fleece Mainline now is going to... It has the potential to lose in combat because Fleece Mainline is a 4/4.
Yep.
So those are 2/2 creatures. Now Den Protector can jump in front. So I like the use of Dromoka's command a lot there by Nelson. 1 damage on the Fleece Mainline, 3 to go. Chris considering double blocking, but Brad would be fine with that because he'd kill both of those creatures. That's why the use of Dromoka's command there is so good. Yeah, he'll double block. Chris going to lose both creatures. Brad loses Fleece Mainline. The follow-up now is a morph. Unclear if it's Death Mist Raptor or Den Protector. If it's Den Protector, this game is likely over. Nykthos the draw.
He has the ability to get back Dromoka's command, pump up again.
Uh-huh.
And then the 5/4 Den Protector crosses the finish line uncontested.
Brad gonna untap and take a draw step here. Picked up a forest, 2 Death Mist Raptors in hand. He isn't moving too quickly at this point. But all right, it is Den Protector, and that is gonna do it. Chris knows it right away. Get back to Dromoka's command and make the Den Protector into a 5-power creature. It's unblockable, and that's going to do it. So Brad Nelson is going to tie things up here against Chris Andersen. Bant Megamorph, Green Red Devotion, they're getting ready here for game number 3, and that's how games have to go for Brad to win.
And that's what the games kind of looked like during the Swiss rounds, except that Chris was able to sneak one thing through. But you saw the winning recipe for the first time in 4 games. It's pressure, backed up by some disruption, attack Chris's mana, keep him off balance, close out the game before Chris is able to get anything too big into play.
And the disruption spells are really, really good from Nelson's deck. Valorous Stance, Dromoka's Command, Disdainful Stroke, they're all premium hits in this matchup.
Oh, for sure. I mean, they all check Chris's big plays. So the disruption that Brad has is great. He just needs to find it in time and back it up with enough pressure to make the game short.
We'll find out if he can do it game number 3, if Chris can overpower him yet again as both these players finish sideboarding. We'll talk about the spring creature collection here on the Open Series. You've seen the bunny, the bee, and the kitty, along with the Delver of Squeakrits.
Yeah, our spring collection is available right now online. Card sleeves, playmats, dice bag. You can get over to starcitygames.com/creature collection to get your items today, or head over to our dealer booth at any of our Opens or any Grand Prix that we're vending at.
We'll have that summer collection for you soon.
Yep.
That'll involve our good friend Furious George.
Yeah. Playmat I will probably purchase.
Yeah. We can't forget about, of course, in July next month, the Piglet. Given the beatdowns, and well, what comes after that, it's a bit of a surprise. We'll have September for you soon enough, along with the pun, too.
Yep.
Don't know what that's going to be either.
Probably pretty clever, given the history.
I wish I were clever enough to think of things like that.
Delver of Squeakrits, that is not my wheelhouse of humor.
No. The Eternal Witness and everything else, I can't do that.
I'll leave that to the BBDs and the LSVs of the world.
Yep. I just don't have it in me.
Yeah.
Our other match appears to still be in game number 2. It's Kevin Jones, who's playing Jeskai Aggro, against the Boz, Andrew Boswell, who is playing Abzan Aggro. Of course, those players appear to be in game number 2. Kevin Jones was able to win game number 1. Jones with 1 Open Series title to his name. Boswell, oddly enough, without any. Quite a few Open Series top 8s for Boz, but has not got the trophy just yet.
Another weird anomaly of the Open Series.
Yeah, this is his 8th Open Series top 8. No W's just yet. Andersen, Nelson, they both have titles to their name. But soon enough, Boswell. Soon enough. Just been informed that now the backup match is going to game number 3. Boswell fighting back with his Abzan Aggro deck. It's always fun to watch a master with his deck as well. You know, Boswell's been playing Abzan Aggro forever. Top 8 at Grand Prix Miami with it, really destroyed that tournament. Top 8 of the Open Series in Providence, too, before being dispatched by Oliver Tomiko. And he's just been playing the same deck, and he's been doing it his way the entire time. Bermaz, Warden, he plays 4 copies of where basically no one else does.
Yeah. That, to me, is the defining characteristic.
Yeah. He has always loved Warden to the first tree, right from the start.
There's some odd ones hanging out on his list, too. 1 copy of Sorok the Huntcaller. I know we've seen that in lists before, but I haven't really seen Boswell play with it. 2 copies of Herald of Torment with a 3rd one in the sideboard.
No, Boswell's always been a pretty big fan of Abzan Charm, and he's without those this weekend.
Yeah, actually 0 in the 75. Just on 4 Dromoka's Commands, 3 Valorous Sands, 3 Ultimate Price.
No surprise, as we mentioned, to see Ultimate Price in the deck this weekend because of how popular Stormdeath Dragon has been.
Gunning for Devotion, gunning for Dragons.
Yep.
I mean, that's what that removal suite says to me.
If you don't expect a lot of Abzan Aggro to be here, you can start Ultimate Price. If you do, you had better stay away from it.
Yeah.
Because it is terrible in the mirror. But that's just really good metagaming.
You know, you gotta roll the dice with the removal suite with decks like this because, you know, you can't play a bunch of heroes downfalls. They're a little bit too slow, and you just gotta predict what you think is gonna show up. Go for that. Know that you're conceding some game 1s in certain matchups. Clean it up with your sideboard. And you see 3 copies of Self-Inflicted Wound and 3 copies of Hunt the Hunter. So he's trying to shore up his liabilities with Ultimate Price in the sideboard.
Both players taking a look at their opening hands. Looks like Andersen is happy enough. He'll just play a Forest. No Elvish Mystic. We're underway here in game number 3. Does Nelson have an Elvish Mystic is the question. He'll just play a Windswept Teeth past the turn back. Andersen will take a draw. Genesis Hydra is what he's found. No surprise that acceleration on turn number 2, though it is notable that he's played Nykthos as a second land.
Usually implies that there are no more lands hanging out there, though there is a rugged highland in the list. There are additional copies of Nykthos.
I think he may have another copy of Nykthos in hand right now. Brad going to sacrifice his Windswept Teeth for a Plains. He's down to 19 as he begins his second turn. Dragonlord Ojutai was the draw. Very important for him to have Fleece Main line, and he does. So there's the pressure. Andersen will draw a card. It's a Death Mist Raptor.
I think Chris has enough quality 3-mana plays. He doesn't have to do anything with the Nykthos just yet.
Not willing to just yet, that's for sure. Just going to play Death Mist Raptor, pass the turn back. This is a helpful card here for Andersen to really stymie the aggression from Nelson.
Yes. He hasn't really had something like this in the games we've watched so far. The early Fleece Main Lions from Brad have been productive. And Chris with Rattleclaw Mystic in his hand too, so if Brad decides to offer up the trade here, Chris has a way to get the Death Mist Raptor back and block something else.
I think Chris will block immediately if Brad attacks.
Oh, no question. Although, in a weird way, Brad has an incentive to attack here because he wants to suppress Chris's Devotion while he's stalled on lands, but has a Nykthos in play.
Nelson going to play a face-down Den Protector. He'll pass the turn back. Andersen will draw. See if he's able to find a land here. He is in Wooded Foothills. That's a big draw there for Chris.
And Wooded Foothills is so good here because Chris has Xenagos in hand. And with the Death Mist Raptor in play, it's hard for Brad to attack without losing too much.
We'll see if he wants to search for the mountain or the forest. But that was a huge draw there for Andersen. You mentioned Xenagos can come in. It can plus also put a Rattleclaw Mystic on the battlefield with the mana.
Yeah.
There's a lot he can do.
And Chris is threatening then a lot of mana. And then we're already into a pretty early stage of the game for Brad to be forced to be leaving up mana for Disdainful Stroke or Valorous Stance out of fear of whatever Chris can do with all that mana.
There is Xenagos. The elevator's going up. Rattleclaw Mystic, Death Mist Raptor there to protect. Chris has got to be pretty happy with his position right now.
Yeah, now his Devotion is up to 5.
Yep.
Plus his Xenagos in play to generate mana. Plus the Rattleclaw Mystic itself. I mean, he can do some pretty crazy stuff next turn.
He has Nykthos on the battlefield and Nykthos in hand.
The payoff card you see in hand is Genesis Hydra.
Yep.
One of the better ones to have in this spot because Chris does have to be worried about Disdainful Stroke in his Lord's play.
Nelson's draw for the turn was a copy of Elspeth.
Charlie Reinhardt, please report to the stage. Charlie Reinhardt, please report to the stage.
So important for Chris that he was able to slow things down a little bit. I don't think we've seen a game yet where Brad got the brakes put on him this early on.
Feels a little reminiscent of game 1, but that was a game that Brad lost.
Yeah, even in losing efforts, even if you go back to the Swiss rounds, Brad was able to get Chris kind of low before the game got out of control. Now it already feels like we've gotten to that stage, and Chris is at 19.
Nelson going to have to give this one a long thought on how he's going to get himself out of this situation, because this is going to be pretty tough now. Den Protector is the morph right now.
The problem is that he can't wait around all that long because Chris can just win by going ultimate with Xenagos.
Looks like both creatures may be going towards Xenagos. Perhaps Brad hoping Chris will make some sort of mistake here. It's a curious attack.
Justin Harper, please report to the stage. Dustin
I mean, Brad can't win by blocking.
please report to the stage.
And even though these trades may be ugly on the surface, Brad has to make some effort to clean up the Devotion.
Cleaning up Devotion in turn slows down Xenagos' plus as well.
Yeah, all the creatures that Brad kills on Chris's side amount to a lot of mana because there's implications for Xenagos, there's implications for Nykthos as well.
Brad gonna unmorph the Den Protector. That'll knock Xenagos down to 1, return the Windswept Teeth. Those two creatures will trade. There's a land. Looking to try to leave up Disdainful Stroke. Pass the turn back. Or at least bluff it. Hornet Queen to draw. Devotion currently for Nykthos is 3. you're Brad right now, you're trying to get Chris to maybe overthink things. He's in a pretty good position. He has the ability to generate a lot of mana. You really want to try to represent Disdainful Stroke as hard as you can.
Yeah.
There's a morph. Gonna unmorph Rattleclaw Mystic. That's gonna bring back Death Mist Raptor. That'll get you a surge in mana. Keep in mind, no Xenagos activation just yet, though Chris is reaching for the die. Here's Nykthos. This is gonna be a pretty big turn.
Oof. Yep.
Here's an activation.
And the problem is Brad gave up some tempo this turn to at least get himself in a position to whittle down Chris's board and threaten the Xenagos next turn. And Chris has just unloaded this turn, even with some of his mana suppressed from Brad's attacks.
This is a Genesis Hydra for 8. Temple of Abandon, a Mountain, a Sylvan Caryatid, a Courser of Crewfix, Roast, Foothills, Pelucranos, Rugged Highland.
Nothing wrong with Pelucranos.
Nope.
You know, it's not a knockout punch here. It's not something like Dragon Lord Atarka, but that's not bad.
You think about what Brad did last turn to slow Chris down.
Yeah. I mean, that was a really solid turn from Brad. He tied up a lot of Chris's resources, and now this is the board on the following turn.
Yep. It shows the explosiveness of this Green-Red Devotion deck. I know you talked about it might be getting a new tool in Nissa.
Yep.
That's even scarier. Let's see what Brad can do to try to combat this. It's going to be pretty tough.
We're looking at multiple copies of Valorous Stance. Disdainful Stroke in Valorous Stance. He needs 2 cards.
He'll start by sacrificing the Heath, get a basic Plains. I think we might see a Valorous Stance here on either the Hydra or the Pelucranos. Keep in mind, Andersen's last card in hand is a copy of Hornet Queen. That's a card that Brad conceded to game 1 immediately. There's Valorous Stance on the Pelucranos.
And that card does not get easier for Brad to beat after board.
Yep.
If it resolves, again, we're looking at pretty close to a wrap here.
Island the draw.
And there's only 1 in the 75. So I don't think Brad's going to make efforts to play around it.
Well, you've just found out that he's not going to, and Chris
Yep.
is untapping very, very quickly. He'll draw a card. It's a copy of Wooded Foothills. Truth be told, it almost doesn't matter what card he draws. Here comes the Genesis Hydra. Looks like Death Mist Raptor wants to come in as well.
Yeah. And on this board state, I wouldn't be surprised if the Hornet Queen just got a straight concession out of Brad.
Wouldn't surprise me either. If you're Brad, you're just hoping he's out of gas.
Yeah.
That's all you could really do in that spot. And hopefully your Dragon Lord Ocean can carry you to victory.
Brad's got an Elspeth to answer the Genesis Hydra. I mean, it's not inconceivable to win based on what's on the board. But Hornet Queen's going to be too much.
See how Nelson wants to block here. It looks like he's going to use Den Protector to probably jump in front of the Death Mist Raptor. Not the greatest trade because, of course, Death Mist Raptor can come back, but wants to try to preserve his life total, you have to imagine a little bit. Maybe he's just jump blocking the Genesis Hydra.
You're probably trying to preserve some life so we can get to Elspeth.
Yep. He's not going to like what he sees here, though. There's Hornet Queen. 4 insects will come along with it. Xenagos will make a Satyr token. Andersen will pass the turn back. Nelson will untap. He'll draw a card, but I don't think there's any way for him to get out of this situation. We saw him concede to Hornet Queen straight up game 1.
I mean, you can play Elspeth and battle along for a little while here. I suppose he can try to play towards an Elspeth emblem. He can try to sit around, block for a while, try to go ultimate, and leave some tokens around. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can see the frustration, too. He just knows he can't get through Hornet Queen. His deck is literally incapable of getting through the card.
Right. The only out that he has there is Elspeth, plus to make some tokens, try to get to the ultimate, but Chris can just peck away at Elspeth over time.
Yeah.
There's just nothing to be done about that card. 1 copy in Chris's 75, showed up games 1 and 3, and